Hi everyone, so today we have a very special video that we are going to be sharing. We are going to be sharing the story. I'm sure if you've watched a lot of our videos in the past, then you kind of know parts of this, but I've never really sat down and told the whole thing. We thought that would be really cool because it's our 10th anniversary.
I actually got my Barbie about 6 months after she was born.
Yes, and I was 2 when I got my first Barbie. Grandparents who worked at the Salvation Army brought a big bag of them home, and they were like scrappy dolls. They weren't nice dolls. They were pretty new for the time in the early 90s. They were like late 80s, early 90s dolls, but they were trash. They had haircuts. They didn't have any of their original clothes really, and so that was kind of my debut into dolls, and kind of Colleen's too, because
before that I really only had Dila, my first Barbie, the 1989 my first Barbie.
There was just something about dolls that I found really compelling at a young age. I thought they were beautiful. I thought they were interesting, and so in the beginning we didn't have a lot of dolls, mostly secondhand things. As we got a little bit older, I would say our interests developed. I found that I was buying a lot of Disney dolls. They were like my first, I guess, taste in dolls.
My first big time interest, or for me obsession, and for me that first thing was actually Kelly, and that went on for a number of years.
Yeah, we got our first Kellys together, but you took more of a shine, and then I kind of let you have/play with my Kelly. And it was actually her playing with Kelly and me playing with my Ariel doll that made us play together.
I would be playing in my doorway and she would be playing in her doorway, but we wouldn't play together.
I wanted to play with her, but she didn't.
But I was against the idea, and part of that was I didn't want to share. But then when I realized I could play with her Kelly doll and her stuff, but she wouldn't be touching mine.
I let her walk all over me. As time went on, we really liked playing with each other, and so we kind of stopped playing dolls with other people.
Mom and Dad would say to us, why do you guys need to sit there and come up with a story before you play? And we thought that suggestion, we both thought that suggestion was completely barbaric.
Oh yeah, we loved it. We would have a set that we would plan. We'd have a cast of characters, how they were related, kind of what we wanted to happen.
Yeah, we would actually take a whiteboard before we played, and she would map out the set, and on the side we would list a group of characters, and Dad would think we're nuts, but then he would just be so used to it, they would just shake his head.
I really liked set design, and so I would plan themes for to create a vibe, and Colleen really loved dressing dolls. And actually the funny thing is, you can see a lot of that in what we do here on YouTube. As Told by Dollies is kind of representative of how we would play. When we come up with As Told by Dollies, we don't script stuff, but we'll have a general idea of who we're gonna use, what we want to use for the set, and then we ad-lib from there. As things went on, we kind of started getting a larger collection than a lot of kids, because it became my main focus. Especially, I wasn't really into other toys. I had other toys, but once I reached 7, it was pretty much all dolls for me.
Yeah, me too. It's not a doll. Why would I want to waste my time or money on it?
Yeah, Mom and Dad allowed us to always have our dolls set up as long as they had a path from the stairs into the laundry room and into their room, and to the back door. As long as they could walk into those places, they didn't care what we did.
We could fill the rest of that place with Barbie.
And so it was all the time, always set up. And
at some point she went to this organizational place where she had our dolly play sets organized. Remember, you bag them by play set, so all the living room stuff in here.
Oh, in the containers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got really obsessed.
It's a primitive form of what I do now, but I would say that we kind of moved into collecting dolls as I approached 9 or 10 years old. Because before then, we mostly bought things that we planned to play with. Now, I'm not really sure what it was that shifted that interest, but maybe it was we started seeing a lot of early 90s Barbies for really cheap prices at the flea market, still boxed, and we were kind of compelled to buy these old dolls that were really probably less than 10 years old at the time, but they seemed exotic. We would buy them, and then we would get the little pamphlets with them.
Yup.
And those pamphlets were kind of our research, because we didn't have the internet at home, we didn't have any doll books, and for the record, we didn't have the internet at home until I was 14 or 15. That was also around the time I started making over all of our childhood Barbies. Again, primitive techniques to what I do now. All of our favorite dolls would get weekly bags. When our mom passed away, in 2002, I would say that's when dolls kind of took on a more sentimental meaning. It wasn't just how we spent our time, which we literally would go on weekends. We'd wake up really early, 7 in the morning, we'd be downstairs, we'd play Barbie, Mom would call us up for lunch, we'd eat lunch, we'd play make-believe at lunch, we'd come downstairs, we'd play dolls until bedtime. You know, after Mom died, Dad's way of kind of making up for it to us, because there was a lot of stuff going on at home. He failed as a parent in a lot of ways at that time, and so his way of kind of compensating was to take us out every weekend and buy us toys. We'd go to KB Toys, and he'd let us pick out some of the dolls that were cheap, and we'd go to the flea markets on Sundays, and that's when our collection exploded.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean,
it went from we almost always had more dolls than most kids once it took on, to like it becoming what most people consider an excessive amount.
I remember when we first got into collecting, I kind of counted out, and it was pretty close to 500-ish that we would have had in that whole span of time. When I was about 12, we didn't take the bus home because Colleen could never catch it. And so Dad would pick us up at school, and then he worked in town, and we would sit at his office for like an hour and a half until he was out of work, because he got out of work at around 3:30. He had the internet at his office, and so we would spend a lot of time on the internet at his office looking at dolls, and that's where we found out eBay existed. Like, there wasn't much social media at the time. This was like 2003, 2004, so a lot of what you would find would be like people's personal websites. And there was this one in particular, I think it's pronounced Kattis Dolls, Kattis. She was an adult collector. Now, bear in mind that my vision of a collector as a kid was like this old person who only collected to sell dolls, kept them all in the boxes, and the dolls were like their prisoners and they were miserable. That was like 10-year-old Shelley's view of a collector, and Colleen's. We saw this website. She had a lot of knowledge about dolls. She had like this whole section on this dollhouse, had like little picture skits she would do with her Kelly dolls. And it kind of introduced to me the first time this idea that like an adult collector could still enjoy dolls,
yeah,
in kind of like that childish way, while also having that advanced knowledge of what
what I liked about her site that I think resonates to this day with both of us is that she had both personal stuff and informative stuff, which set her apart, especially for the time. A lot of people, it's either one or the other.
That was actually my inspiration for having 1,000 Splendid Dolls way into the future, believe it or not. It was that website. I remember sitting at the desk in my dad's office and thinking, wow, I want to be like this when I'm grown up. Like, I want to have my own like place to share my collection, and maybe some kid like me will find it and will realize they're not so weird for liking dolls. That was a huge part of what motivated us to like do this later on in life. As time went on, we just kind of got tired of playing with dolls. We kind of stopped playing with them as much, and it would happen slowly. It would be like we went from playing every day of the week to only playing on weekends, to only playing maybe one day a week, to maybe a few times a month, to every couple months. And then it just kind of stopped, and the dolls got packed up, and for me a lot of it was the pressure to grow up. Nobody put that on me, more so you than me.
Oh, it's funny is I feel like she felt the pressure more, but I was the one who was getting it more.
And we have a whole video on that called The Dolls Are Out of the Closet if you want more on that particular part of the story. I don't want to like repeat myself too much. Me, who said I don't want to like have dolls anymore. And there was actually a point where I thought of getting rid of all my dolls. And Colleen talked me out of it. It was sort of this like 5-year window where we didn't play dolls, we didn't look at dolls, but they were always on the back of my mind. I tried to conform and be like your average teenager. And so Colleen just stopped because it wasn't fun anymore when I wasn't doing it.
But I always knew that she didn't really want to give it up. Yeah, I always knew, like I'd see her when we go to the flea markets, I'd see her kind of looking wistfully at the dolls, like she wanted to look, and instead of telling her she should go, I'd be like, oh, we don't play with them anymore. The
pivotal moment in both of our lives was when our dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
In 2009.
I graduated from high school in June of 2009, and then on Thanksgiving Day 2009, we made Dad go to the emergency room because he had turned like yellow, because he had jaundice, and I was like, no Dad, you're like a banana, you have to go to the hospital.
Banana.
So he went, and then obviously they didn't know like that night, but they could tell from the test I did there was like some, I think they said like foreign object in his pancreas.
Yeah.
It was December 21st that he went in for his surgery. It was called the Whipple procedure, and they remove like a bunch of your insides, like your pancreas, I think your gallbladder, part of your intestines. It's extremely...
Yeah, they took out a ton.
Extremely aggressive, like you will never be the same after they do that. And he had a less than 5% chance of surviving.
Which we didn't know until what happened.
No, and even he didn't. I guess, I don't know if he wasn't paying attention or something, because Dad was not the best at adulting.
Me neither.
But it was supposed to be, I think, a 10-hour surgery.
It was actually, it ended up being 22, 23, 24, something in that.
Yeah, it was like almost a day. So we spent that Christmas, Dad was in a medically induced coma, and I was in cosmetology school at the time. She was on college, so she had winter break, but the way my cosmetology school was set up, we didn't have like, we only had like the holidays off. Christmas, we went to visit him and he was in a medically induced coma, and then we went home and we had gotten an invite to go to our uncle's, but like, we didn't go because we just didn't really feel like being around people, and we usually just spent the holidays at that point with Dad. And I think going through all of that, like I was 18, you were 22 going on 23, that's a lot to like have to see your dad on life support and know like he might not come out of this. It's terrifying. Like if you ever have to see someone like that, it's like one of the worst ways you can see somebody. Like we didn't have a lot of money at the time because Dad had lost his job that spring. And so, because that was around the time of like the recession, it just put things into perspective. And I remember I would sit there like in my Jeep on the way home from beauty school, which was like 50 minutes to an hour away, and I would just kind of ponder life, and I would think to myself, like, what have I done? Like, I spent all this time trying to fit society's standards of what I should be, and I'm miserable, and I don't know who I am anymore. And, you know, now my dad, he might not live through all of this, and Colleen kind of had a similar revelation too. And so I think that's when the seeds kind of got planted.
Yeah, we started to kind of like both like take a look at ourselves and what was really important in our lives and what really mattered and what we actually wanted.
It didn't happen overnight. Like, you know, you spend so many years transitioning yourself to be somebody else. You're not going to be who you were.
Like at that point, she was kind of like losing interest in the persona she'd created.
Yes, very much so.
And I was sitting down and looking and thinking that I'd been thinking about the wrong things and worried about money a lot, when at the end of the day the most important things were Dad and Shelly and Andy and Oliver.
We weren't close at that time either.
No, it's not that we weren't still close in a way, but I feel like we had drifted apart because...
For a lot of reasons.
Yeah, a lot of reasons.
I was really depressed. I pushed a lot of people away because when you're depressed, you just, that's what you do. But when I graduated in, I think, May of 2010, Dad was still going through his, like, chemo and radiation, and so we would go with him. And I remember it was kind of around that time I started getting into like painting again. I would do like oil paint by numbers, and then I started doing my own paintings and drawings. That's when we bought our first Barbie book. I kind of found the Ultimate Barbie book online, and I just bought it to kind of see who our old dolls were. And as 2010 kind of progressed, we kind of leaned more into those things, and at some point Colleen went back to school in the fall. And I briefly had a job at a salon, but I hated it, and I'm glad it didn't work out. I was home alone with Dad all day. He would be up for doing things, but what you have to understand is when you have that kind of procedure, even though at some point he was cancer-free, he was disabled. He was missing all this stuff inside.
Yeah, he was never the same.
He went from looking like a man of his age to looking like he was 80 years old in like 2 months time. He lost a ton of weight, you know, it was scary. And so sometimes he would spend all day sleeping on the couch, and I would really just interact with him to give him his medications and to feed him. Like, you know, we took care of Dad.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, not to say that, like, he wasn't still taking care of us in many ways, because...
I think we all, it's kind of like the relationship that we have now, where we take care of each other, like, you do things for me and I do things for you.
And so, you know, I got really bored sitting at home all day, and I think that led me to reaching out and finding stuff to do rather than watching TV with him all day, because I just don't have the attention span for TV all day. And that is how I found this book online, the Disney Dolls book by Margot Rana. And this is the reason we're filming this video, which you'll see. I bought this because I had a lot of Disney dolls already, and I thought that would be a fun book. And when I got this book in the mail, it was probably November 2010, which, by the way, we have a signed copy by coincidence.
Oh my god, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's from a library, and she signed it for the library.
I didn't even realize.
I just thought there was something different about Margot Rana's style. She has photos of mostly dolls out of the box, and she writes a lot of funny personal blurbs. Like, if you were to read my Flickr, I'd say that her and I have similar writing styles, and that's not intentional. Like,
no, because Shelly hadn't actually read stuff in this for ages.
It kind of gave you, like, a sense that she really liked what she was writing about, which was different than the Ultimate Barbie book, which was just like, you know, doll, box tape. Within a month or so of getting this book, I was online shopping for Disney dolls. And I'll never forget the day he was laying on the couch, and I came up to him and I said, "Dad," and I had thought about this all day, by the way, and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "There's this doll I really want to buy on eBay." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "This doll." "This doll? You haven't bought a doll in like years." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I really want this Mulan doll, and she's in this book, and she's a really good deal. She's like $10. She was literally like $10.50, and that included tax and shipping." He's like, "Okay, yeah, fine." So then a few hours passed, and he's like, "What doll did you buy?" And so, you know, I show him the doll, and he's like, "You know, how about this? We didn't do Christmas really this year. I'll give you, I think, like $100, and you can buy what you want on eBay." And then from then on, I was on eBay all day. I get these packages coming like constantly. This is where our shopaholism comes from. You're like, "Oh, who'd you get today?" He kind of got excited about it. We came up with this idea to like put shelves in my room. You know, it kind of just spun off from there. And I remember he would ask me a lot, "What about Bratz dolls? What about Bratz dolls?" Because that had been my thing.
It's funny because I was also asking her, "What about Bratz dolls?"
It was Disney dolls that were kind of my segue into everything else. But within that year, we were back into Bratz and Barbie, and Dad and Colleen were the ones who kind of urged me, like, "Put some Bratz in your room."
The reason why this is such an important thing that happened in our lives is because when this led her to asking for that Mulan, it opened the door. Like it brought all those things, and it was kind of that because this was the beginning of 2010 that she got that Mulan doll. Dad died like in May of 2012, so maybe that like last year and a half or so, it was like a lot of the good memories of that last year and a half with Dad are actually because this happened.
But then when I got into dolls again, like Colleen got into it, of course, again, and then Dad was really supportive, and he would want to help me come up with ways to put shelves in my room or help me make doll stands. And then it opened this door for us to go flea marketing, and I was excited, and he would be excited when we found something cool, and he would go out, because sometimes he'd be feeling well enough and he'd want to go visit his friends, and I didn't want to like be there with him while he was with his best friend Jimmy. So he had some alone time. He would come home and he would have stopped at a yard sale, or he'd have stopped at like a little flea market or something, and he'd have like a doll for me, and that's where a lot of like some of my interest stemmed from, like him finding me Snow White dolls. So it just made the last year really special. Obviously, we hadn't really been back into dolls super long when Dad passed away in May of 2012, but we both collectively decided, and I remember I said to Colleen the night he passed away, I said we should keep doing what makes us happy and not give up what we've found, like dolls and stuff, because, you know, after our mom had passed away in 2002, we definitely did give up a lot of things, all of us, and that's just, I think, one of the worst things you can do to yourself when you experience some kind of traumatic event. Is so we both vowed to stay into dolls, and actually that's when I first started posting on social media. Was not long after Dad died. Within like the month, I had another Flickr account, and I would just kind of post different things, and that was my first kind of segue into social media. But because I had never really done social media before, like literally I didn't do any of that as a teenager, my original experience on social media with doll collecting was very negative. And I don't want to go too much into that, but what I can say is that you think that everyone in that group is going to be nice and get along and be understanding and be supportive, but the reality is, with any group of people, there are always going to be those who want to be better than everybody else.
Yeah, there's a lot of elitism and gatekeeping within any community.
I saw it a lot when I was on Flickr the first time. I unfortunately was naive, and I just kind of made friends with everybody, and I wasn't a really developed collector at the time. I was just kind of rediscovering my interests, and when people would say Moxie girls are cheap and crappy quality, or this type of doll isn't good, it made me feel like bad for even considering liking those things, and then I regurgitated what other people said. And so I wouldn't even own, say, a newer Barbie, and I would say things like, they're not good. And I learned that I wasn't that kind of collector from doing my old Flickr account for like a year and a half. I learned that I didn't want to be that person, and that person wasn't really me, and that I just really like all dolls and I'm not that picky.
Yeah, the Shelley's idea of, oh, I'm never going to collect changes.
I'm not a person who believes in absolutes, okay? I'm a very flexible person in my opinions. Like, there are things in life that I firmly believe. I do have firm stances on stuff, but I tend to see the world in shades of gray. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, and I kind of view doll collecting that way. I don't really believe in absolutes. I tend to kind of like it all and be open-minded to all of it, and while I might have my preferences, generally speaking, they're not very strong preferences, which is why I have a lot of favorite dolls, or a lot of dolls that changed my collection. I lost that innocence when I went on social media before and I didn't really know myself enough as a collector, and that whole negative experience was what inspired what I do now. At some point when I deleted my social media and I didn't plan to come back, I thought about it and I realized that, you know, like, it's not Flickr's fault. It's not even the other collectors' faults. It all boils down to yourself. Like, you create your own reality. And yes, it's true, no matter what you post online, no matter how nice you are and how not, like, unoffensive you try to be, people are always gonna dislike you, people are always gonna troll, people are always gonna be offended, like, oh my gosh, the number of people I have offended over the years over silly things, like all kinds of things that you're going to be subjected to online.
But I would say the percentage, see, when we were on your old Flickr, because you get what you project, and you made poor decisions early on how you wanted to present yourself, and I was in on it too. We realized that it was because of the message we were putting out there, or the message we weren't putting out there, that was getting us so much negativity. Because in the 4.5 years we've been on this channel, which is a bigger platform, I would say we got less negative stuff here, even we had all the negative stuff together, than in that year-ish.
I learned that you are what you put out, and I decided that I wanted there to be an innocent, passionate, sentimental kind of community out there, and I knew there were other people like me, but I knew I wasn't going to attract those kinds of people by putting out what I was doing before, and I kind of learned what I did like posting before, what my strengths were. And I know, like, even back then, people used to ask me a lot about helping them identify dolls and ask me a lot of restoration tips. So I focused on the things I knew I was good at and enjoyed doing, and then I built on that. And you know, we're always evolving. I mean, I say we've definitely stayed true to what our mission statement was since we started my channel on Flickr, but they've evolved. We've added a lot more layers, and I think that we've gotten more confident I mean, more so me than you, because
I still don't feel that confident.
The most important thing is being authentic to yourself, because you're not going to be happy. I mean, I learned this actually as a teenager too. You're not going to be happy putting on an air to, like, impress other people. And, like, for me, I never changed because I wanted other people to like me. I think the saddest part in all of it was that I just wanted to like myself. And the more I tried to be someone I wasn't, the more I didn't like myself. And the truth was, I always knew who I was deep down, and I always did have, like, an opinion, and I always did have a personality and interest, but I was ashamed of that, and I didn't let that grow. And I think that what you see now, it's who I've always been my whole life. It's just, I let it grow. I just want to share what we love and the fun of the hobby, and, you know, it took a lot of wrong turns, but I think that all of those mistakes and all those times we gave up dolls or gave away dolls or posted stuff on social media I wouldn't post now, you know, it all taught us something. But the reason we are doing this today is because we have two very, very special dolls. So, as you know, I'm holding this book for a reason. So Margot Rana actually sells some of her dolls on eBay. Now, I knew this because I probably want to say 6 years ago, I was doing some kind of research and I came across her eBay. I knew it was her because she advertised a lot of the things she was selling as being from, like, featured in certain books. She has several books. And so at the time, there weren't any dolls that really spoke to me that she was selling, and her prices were kind of expensive. Found her eBay, again, by accident, on Halloween night, which is a special night for us because Dad used to take us out on Halloween after Mom died, and instead of taking us trick-or-treating because he didn't want to do it without Mom, he would buy us a doll. So I didn't realize it until after I paid for these dolls, that it was Halloween night. She had 2 Disney dolls, and the first one we found is one that Colleen picked out.
So this is the Applause Belle doll. I don't know, I was always really intrigued by this doll in this book. There was always something about her that interested me, and Beauty and the Beast was my first Disney movie. Like, I had that probably around the time Shelley was born.
And my doll was actually boxed when I purchased her, but I got Wedding Snow White, and I chose Snow White because Dad bought me a lot of Snow White dolls that last year he was alive. She was one of my favorites when I got really into Snow White dolls. that she was slid out of her tray for this photo, but I got her box. She was still boxed, and you could tell Margot had slid her open because the bottom of the box was damaged.
Like, yeah.
So this is Belle up close. Obviously, I boil washed her hair straight because it was crazy. And she even has her little shoes. She's basically like the classics Belle, but she was released by Applause. They had a beast that was kind of like in her
I love the shimmery gown.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite outfits.
It reminds me of the Perfume Princess line.
It does. And then we have Snow White. And I also did her hair as well because she had like that really hard gelled hair. It's shiny because I put diluted gel on it after I boil washed her, but I did have to take off her veil. I used a pin to kind of stick it back through her head, but she has this beautiful ornate outfit. She's just so pretty, and I love her face. It's kind of like an interesting hybrid of several different facial screenings. So we hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a longer one, but I wanted to commemorate our 10th anniversary, and I think that it all played out in a very special way, and that path led us to here. And you'll see pictures of these dolls on my Flickr. They may or may not already be up if you want to just kind of look at them up close and see all their different like layers, because she's got like panties and everything. I'm sorry. You've been in a box office, you're probably very modest. We're gonna look at Snow White's underwear. But if you're interested in seeing Snow White's underwear, you can see the pictures of their clothes and them on my Flickr. And until next time, love your dolls, love yourself, and love your life.